Greetings everyone and welcome to the Blackwater Cantina. My name is Mazz and today I'm going to talk to you about the colour scheme I use for my Dusk and how I achieve my non-metallic metal. So without further ado, let's get into it. So firstly, the colours that I use. Graphene grey for the base coat, a pale blue grey and underbelly blue for the mid-tones, and then morrow white for the highlights. So first up, we're base coating with the graphene grey. This gives it a nice blue sort of tone and texture to the sort of base coat of the metal. We're going to basically just go over all of the areas that we want to be metal, completely cover it. This is going to be our shadow colour. This is going to be as dark as we want to go. So just make sure you're applying that in nice even strokes, keeping it consistent and making sure you're getting the coverage. Then for our first highlight step, we're going to do a 50-50 mix of graphene grey and Vallejo Colours pale blue grey. Now these will give again more blue into that metallic look, which offsets nicely against the blue that I use for my glow, and then I use a rich warm colour for the base, but I wanted to make sure that I had lots of cool tones in my metals and in my colour scheme for these guys. So as you can see, it's a 50-50 mix, the pale blue grey and the graphene grey there, and then we're going to go in covering about 85%-ish of the surface area. Now when this first goes on, it's going to look like it's a huge great big leap, but when this dries down, it's actually going to blend in quite nicely with the shadow colour that we got below. Here you can see I'm only really leaving the very deepest recesses or around any sort of bolts and bits just to give them that edge, that nice little highlight in there. Get this on. This is probably the longest stage. This takes a little while to get everything in, but don't worry, we're going to get quicker as we go through, as we paint less and less of the metal. Once that's all in, we're going to switch straight to using just pale blue grey and making sure we're catching the highlighted areas, trying to use, again, probably only about 70% of this is going to be covered, maybe even less. This is going to depend on how bright and shiny you want your metal to go. This is kind of where you determine whether it's a nice bright polished steel or it's a bit more worn and dusty. Here you can see we're going in, catching the edges, and you can see that nice dark shadow line that I'm leaving in between the layers here. That's very important to sell this. One of the big things that you need for non-metallic metal is contrast between your higher levels and your shadows. So make sure you're leaving those nice deep shadows in. If you think the shadow is too big, again, depends whether you want a darker or a lighter chromish metal. The darker you want your metal to be, the bigger you need to leave those shadows at this point. So here we're also looking at the consistency of the paint. I tend to thin down a little more than I normally would when painting these stages, or certainly more than we do for the base coats. That will allow us to blend these in a little bit now, before, rather than having to go back at the end and go over with lots and lots of glazes. So use thin coats over an area, and then when you go back in for your second coat, make sure the area you're hitting is a little bit smaller. When it comes to placing highlights for non-metallic metal, that's a bit of a key area for it. So the best thing I can suggest to that is to check out the video that I popped in the description down here, which is Ninjon's non-metallic metal guide. It's really, really handy. Or check out the Squidmar how to highlight volumes. That was absolutely key to me getting this right. And then just practicing, practice, and some more practice. So this will be the third army I've painted entirely in non-metallic metal. I finally think I'm getting into the groove of it, so it's taken a little while. Then we're on to our pure pale blue grey stage. We're going to highlight again, just making sure we're catching all of the edges. Any edge that would be catching the light or is towards your light source, wherever you've positioned it on your model. Make sure you're getting all of those edges and a little bit round the corner as well. So one of the things with non-metallic metal is you want to slightly oversell the highlights. Make sure you're pushing the contrast between your shadow and your highlight, and making sure you're catching all the edges that not only look like they should be correct, but push the effect that little bit more. So after the pale blue grey, we're going to go on to underbelly blue, which is one of the new P3 colours. Another option here is to mix 50-50 mix of pale blue grey and white, but underbelly blue falls nicely in that sort of area and gives a little yellow tone to this. Now, yellow is a great highlight colour, especially a very pale or icy yellow. You'll see that will be used in quite a lot of painting tutorials. The reason for that is it doesn't bleach the colour out as much as white does. Whenever you're adding white into something, you're diluting your pigments, so you're going to end up with less saturated colour. To keep that saturation, using a nice yellow is a good way of tricking it, especially when you're using blues or blacks. That slight yellow tint just tricks the eye slightly and brings that out a little bit lighter. So underbelly blue is a great one here, so we'll use that just to, again, go around the edges. At this point we're almost edge highlighting everything and then just picking out little spots and bits and pieces where it's going to be brightest. And then finally, again, these layers should be quickening up each time as you're painting less and less of the model. But then the final stage is white. Now it's important to make sure you're getting just the edges. Again, as we said before about highlighting edges, it's okay to take that a little bit further than it would sensibly do with the light, just to make sure you're pushing that effect. It also doesn't matter if this edge is sat right next to even some of your darkest shadows. That nice contrast step will really sell this effect. So here we're just edge highlighting right on the top and then pulling out any of those bits that we've given the sort of bars across the metal, just to make sure they're really shining and we're getting all of those extra great lights in there. Again, this takes a lot of practice, so just try it out, see how it goes. Worst case scenario, strip it down, paint it again. And I've been doing this for a very long time, and even there I make mistakes. If we do, and the highlight spreads a little bit too far, just dab it off, try again. You can always glaze back over it later. When I am doing these white highlights, I will often thin this down a little bit and layer it in 2 stages, and just coming back around to make sure we're getting the bright highlight that we want. So hopefully that's worked out for you. If you feel that your metal has come out too light, then don't be afraid to do a glaze with the graphene grey or that deep shadow colour that you've used, just to bring those shadows down. If you are going to do that, make sure you go back and just do those spot highlights again with the white, just to make sure they really pop out. Cool. I hope you found this useful. If you do, give us a like, subscribe, and join us on our Discord. Show me some pictures of what you've achieved with it. And yeah, I'd love to see your work. Thanks very much.